Good morning, good evening, well together listeners. This is another episode of He Said, She Said. In fact, it's episode 31, which means we are rounding out almost to our Masogi, almost to 100 episodes, which is insane. And thank you, listeners and community, for believing in us. So we believe in you, and we're excited to dig into it. Today, we're going to talk about this idea of being well. And it can go multiple ways. But when we started out on this journey, it was wild and well together. And strategically, this idea of life can be wild and so many different events come up or so many different experiences happen. Not necessarily reckless. Sometimes those do happen, but often that give us freedom or may appear to be wild to outsiders. But to those of us that are experiencing it, it's actually a really wonderful opportunity to come alive. And it just looks wild to others or maybe even to ourselves. And then the second part is wellness and being well. And in a world that feels really divided or really chaotic, just saying like, how do I create my own rhythms? How am I a part of communities that are well? And then next week we'll get together. And so wild and well together, today is well. I want us to think about this idea of choose what chooses you, the science of becoming well. And we'll get into it in further detail. The high level though is every choice is a vote for our future selves. And we all want to feel better. I'm going to call it what it is: left, right, up, down. We all want to feel better in life. And so how do we find more energy, more peace, more joy, more purpose? But before we get into all these life hacks and just examples, what is your high-low buffalo, Johnny?
All right. My high was seeing the Odyssey last night. I don't know if I think it's a perfect movie.
No spoiler alerts. There's so many people that want to see it, so no spoiler alert.
No spoilers. I think it may be a perfect movie. The cinematography is absolutely incredible. Even more impressive when you think that very little was done on green screen. The themes are timeless and perfectly executed. They're like cut at human truths. And the action is like so good. The action scenes are unbelievable. So it was epic. I was also seeing it. I saw it in IMAX, and I was about 15 feet from the screen, so I was looking up like this. So I actually need to see it again because I don't think I could see everything on this 100-foot screen. So that was my high.
And huge cast list, right? And I don't work in Hollywood. Huge cast list. Sometimes that can tank, but I'm hearing perfection. 10 out of 10, 5-star. Here we go.
Yeah, there was some. It was star-studded to say the least,
but they delivered. They delivered. Sometimes it's like, oh, that was overshot, like too many cooks in the kitchen, but they delivered.
No, there weren't any didn't feel like any forced cameos. You know what I mean? It was
yeah, exactly.
It's just Christopher Nolan's got it like that. People show up for his project. People will drop what they're doing for his movies.
For sure. And I read that Matt Damon said that it's the hardest one that he's ever done, which is actually incredible if you think about how many movies he's been in, to like not be like, oh, I'm a newbie at this, or oh, I'm, fresh out of school. It's like, no, I've done so many and I'm still working my tail off to make it happen and do it with that effort. So, okay, cool.
Yes. Also, I would just say, if you know Christopher Nolan movies, Memento, Inception, Tenet, Dunkirk, what he does really well is play with chronology and time. And so like the movie cuts across different time. This one wasn't heavy-handed. It was the perfect way to tie in all these little moments, and it all gets wrapped up it's a complete movie. There's no like odds or ends. There are all these Easter eggs that then lead to where it goes. So very, very cool.
Awesome. Okay.
My buffalo is taking the kids out of school early for a movie. So this is the day before. I did not take them to the Odyssey. I took them to see Monsters and Minions. And this is like not even possible. Like not practically, yes, could have done it. My company where I worked, I'm sure that I could have done this, but I would not allow myself to do this, to leave work early and go get the kids, pull them out of school and go take them to a movie. So it's not as though that was pressure that I put on myself based on the work that I was doing, but that was really fun and they really enjoyed it. And I got them pumped full of like In-N-Out and movie snacks, and they didn't go to bed. And it was, whatever. It was good though. This is summer.
Epic. Yeah. Dad was present. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then my low is, as a continuation of last week, I said, like, I'm not under contract at all at the moment. I have all these proposals sitting out there, and it's starting to show up. It's starting to feel I'm first encountering this feeling of like, not okay, when does the next paycheck come? What if I'm want to be a productive person? What do I do? I'm not being put to work right now. So I had a pretty one ugly morning where did not show up a good version of myself. And it was a good gut check. It's like, okay, dude, you said this is what you're going to do. You're going to start your business. You're going to like, this is the moment. This is what it feels like. You have to wrestle with this. You're going to have highs. You're going to have lows. And how do you show up? I had a morning where I didn't show up. I was not patient. I was very anxious, and I had to like snap myself out of it. And I've thought about it. How do I get out of this? 3 ways: invest in my craft, meaning like just do things that invest back into myself. So reading the like scholarly articles that are the things that I say I run my practice off of. So that's one piece of it. 2 is continue to tap into my network to meet people and reconnect with people to inform them what I'm doing and how I can help them and so on and vice versa. And then the third is have moments like taking my kids to the movies, because there's going to be a time where I'm too busy to do that, or I feel like I'm too busy to do that. So it feels weird, but it's actually the right thing to be doing. So that is how I've worked through my low. I'm still wrestling with it, but it's going to be good. I'm coming out of it.
Shoot. I think that's relatable for anybody, and then it's, like, hyper focus for entrepreneurs, right? Where it's like, "Okay, I signed up for this, it's a yes, however, it's a grind right now," and the difference between working for a company versus yourself is will there be food on the table, right? And you've been strategic before, I'm guessing, and set yourself up well, however, it is that, and you're preaching to the choir with me for sure, and I'm sure other community members are like, heard that," and so, yeah, thank you. I hope there's another few good movies out there to sustain as you take off and whatnot, but, yeah, I appreciate that. My
How about you?
Yeah, my high is that last week I shared this, we were at the Dude Ranch in Wyoming, and man, I've had a great summer of unplugging. I just have actively chosen to practice what I preach, and it's paid dividends. And I'm also showing up and working out, and that combination of healthy digital Sabbath and engage like disengagement there, but really re-engagement and being present, and then simultaneously choosing to work out and be present in my own body and saying like, nope, as a mom, like I can still be healthy. Like put my oxygen mask on before I put my kids on, like those sort of things. And the highlight of that is my cousin's in town, which is awesome. And she is staying with us for the week. So I got to go work out in the mornings and go to a workout class in the mornings. And so that's just start my day off really healthy. And I'm sore, man, we're 5 for 5 days. And I'm like,
Wow.
and I couldn't come sooner. So I don't know the last time that I've done that, but I'm feeling, yeah, awesome there. And this will be fun, Buffalo. We decided to go see Minions. Lulu really hasn't done movie theaters yet, so we went and saw Minions and Monsters. So since she shared that, it was great. She sat on my lap for half of it and like was about the popcorn and some of the other experiences as much as the actual big screen. But nonetheless, it was fun to see and fun to do, the four of us. Nick decided to take off. He didn't take off work, but we went after work, and it was great. It was awesome. Um, Opposite of Odyssey, I actually like some of the other Minions, and this is a spoiler or my own critique. I like some of the other Despicable Me's and Minions movies more, but it was still a fun experience overall.
Yeah, yeah.
And then low is, man, this could have been a like playing chicken with, but we have some crazy weeds. I think I've shared this in the past. We had 2 apple trees that were like dead, but the lady had like tried to keep them revived in her estate before we moved here and paid like $800 to take care of the garden and also keep these 2 trees alive, which did not need to be. Anyways, apple trees, come to find out, you cut one, like you cut them down and it's like the spawn, like 50
Yeah.
spawn. And so then we like would dig out all those weeds of the different root systems coming up, and like another 50 would spawn. And so it's just been its own journey. And I think we're going to have to fork up the bill and pay someone like a company to come and dig it out and then resod or replant new trees and stuff there. So all that to be said, I was in the weeds this week, literally, and I have like a little cold or like a something here, and it's summer. So what are we doing with like an allergic reaction or a hay fever or something in my face?
Yeah. No fun.
Like November, December, I get it, but like right now,
Right. Yeah. It's par for the course for around November, not July. We're supposed to be it's supposed to be like clear as can be in July.
totally. And like I don't actually feel sick, so I'm like I do think it's from being in the weeds, and yet not loving it. So that's what I'm coming with. And yeah, talk about wellness juxtaposed to not feeling well. But shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Cool. So what I really want us to focus on, and we'll get into neuroscience. I want to hear your thoughts for sure. I know you have a ton like of just really good analogies in it. And what I want to say though is we become what we repeatedly choose. And we'll talk about the neuroscience of that. But repeating it is we become what we repeatedly choose. And I think of like Cal Ripken Jr., right? Nerdy, we're in baseball season right now. I forget how many. I think he had to, was it Lou Gehrig or whoever's record he had to break, but it was the most consecutive seasons. And it literally took him from the 80s to the early 2000s of showing up at every single game. And he still holds that record. And there's a really good chance that he may hold it for another 100 years because of the intensity and how athletes happen now. And it just is so many, like 15 consecutive seasons of not missing a single game. So I think about that for us, like it's not overnight. And I think we get exhausted, I get exhausted, or I'm like, but I just want my body to be different, or I just want my mindset to be different. And that reminder of it's not one giant decision, but it's repetition of one thing after a next. And we'll talk about the different content or the different segments that make us healthy and make us who we are, but really thinking through that like thousands of tiny moments over and over again in order to make us healthier. And so, yeah, just thinking about that wellness is multidimensional and us engaging with it multiple times. What are your initial thoughts?
Wellness is a buzzword because it's very commoditizable and sellable. Like it's commercialized, right? Wellness, you know, spas, products. There's like so much to sell against wellness. So what I like about some of your thinking that you laid out here is like, let's define what it is because it is multifaceted. And then as always, I leave the neuroscience to the experts and I can just draw upon an expert, you, and I draw on my experience. But my experience is that, well, let's do this. Why don't we actually run through you run through the areas of wellness being given that it is multidimensional. And then I will connect the dots of like how I have approached this, because this is certainly at work in but the cycle and then breaking the cycle, not in a good way, has been happening in my life here recently. And I want to walk you through that. But I think we got to first define what it is. And I think you have really good definitions of it.
Yeah. So thinking often when we say wellness, it's the body first. And yes, it is the body, the physical is part of it. However, we're so much more complex than that too. And so I want us to think of it like our wellness is like spokes of a wheel, right? And this is my core. This is Becca at her core, John at his core, whoever you are at your core. And each one of these spokes really make us who we are. And if one area is neglected, the whole ride becomes bumpier or wobblier, right? We take one out, the wheel starts shifting and stuff as we go over, especially as we go over big bumps of life. And even over small cracks, it's like, whoa, okay. And so those spokes that we can get into is physical. That might look like sleep, nutrition, movement, hydration, rest. Our emotional, processing feelings, healthy boundaries, self-awareness, joy, gratitude. Then mental would be what you're consuming, curiosity, learning, focus. Social is relationships, chosen or given, community, belonging, giving and receiving support. And then spiritual. For many, it can include prayer, reflection, nurture, purpose, awe, meaning, and then service and faith. And so I want us to really think about like which areas feel really nourished. And again, just as a reminder, we'll go over it at the end, but physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual. And then which ones feel neglected? There's no shame in it. This is a mirror in front of us to say, oh, this is what I see happening well here. And actually, this is where I didn't even think about this. Or, oh, I haven't given love to that space for a very long time. What are you thinking as far as you hear those spokes and then where you're at with it?
Yeah. It's funny you say wheel. I'm going to get to this idea of a flywheel in a second. But I think my first reaction to this is mid-30s when you're realizing how interconnected these things are, which is very cliche and also true and also an unlock. And there's a hack in here, and that's the flywheel. So what I mean by that is in my 20s, if I could stay out until 2 a.m. and be up at 7:30 and go surfing and go, quote, rinse away the hangover is the terms that I use, and then go surfing and come back and feel good, and then maybe take a nap at like 3 p.m. I don't get to do that anymore. for a number of reasons. Um, Biology be at the top of it. But here's okay. So the reality is, this is a flywheel. And what is a flywheel? This is a business term, but it's a continuous self-sustaining growth model where a company or a person's actions feed into one another into like unstoppable momentum. And yeah, go ahead.
Thought. I'm glad you gave that definition, and let's repeat it after this comment because I'm highly educated. However, I work in mental health, and so my brain automatically went to, oh, it's got to be some sort of fishing term. So if you'll like say that again, I think it's so important because I had to. That's what I was doing, was googling it before, because I'm like, many of us are not taught this term, and so I think of the wheel of a bike, but this also makes sense because of how important it is for mechanical functioning. So if you'll share it again, I think it's important to hear.
Yeah, so it's a continuous self-sustaining growth model where a person's actions feed into one another to build unstoppable momentum. The other way to think about it is that you build something where less the effort input creates more output than the effort in, if that makes sense, right? So like, let's just say I put in 75 and I get 100 out of it. That's like that's a flywheel. So the, and what I mean by that is all these things connect to everything you just said connects to each other. But there's the hack here is that and I'm going to base this on my lived experience, is if you do one of these things well and you focus on the one thing well and you get it right, it can lead to the next thing, which leads to the next thing. So I'm going to like, here's my example. My fasting was my way into the flywheel. And this is the cycle is as follows. I intermittent fast and I eliminate the foods that I know I'm sensitive to. So it's not like I'm not going to get the Starbucks this today. It's like there are certain foods that I know my body doesn't react well to. I'm itchy on my neck right now because I had something that I react to, right? And any number of things. So I intermittent fast, don't eat for 18 hours, I only eat for 6, and I avoid some of the foods that I'm reacting to, which leads to better sleep, which then leads to a better exercise routine and better result, like yield from that physically and mentally, more dopamine and physical results, which leads to a sharper mind, which then leads to clearer prioritization of the things that I need to do, which leads to um, spiritual reflection. For me, that's via prayer or time in nature, contemplation, and also leads to a more positive mental posture, which leads to gratitude, which also leads to curiosity, what then also leads to discovery and productivity, right? Like the things that I've built is because I'm in a frame of mind to be curious, and I go down that path, and it turns out that I've built something by being curious. So that's all the cycle in a day, which leads to a very full day, which then leads back to being tired and ready for good sleep. So I get better sleep because I'm also just physically, my body's not digesting while I try to go to sleep. And that's the daily cycle. Now, to feel the full effects of that, I have to be like 3 to 4 days in. But the point is that I entered into this flywheel via fasting, and I had a good 6 weeks where I was in that flywheel and just crushed it. And that is the 6 weeks that I took all the action that I did, which we talked about last time. Now, I fell out of the cycle in the last month, and it started with a work trip to, doesn't really matter, but I came back and was off of this cycle, and I fell out of it. So as a result, I'm getting back to maybe eating things that my body doesn't react as well to because they taste really good or whatever it may be. And then I'm not sleeping quite as well. And my point is, a couple of things. I crave being back in that cycle, and I've now come to crave it, and I value it, and I'm working to get back into it now. And the point is that like I'm controlling what I can. It's not trying to control all this all at once. I'm focusing on one thing, and I'm using that one area of discipline to enter into this, and then I'm going to see I saw how it built. It feels so overwhelming to take every bit of advice that I get from the ether, from the universe, and try to put it all into place. It's like I don't have time to do that, and it just causes more anxiety. So for me, control the one thing that I know that I can, What I'm also saying is that, so it's important to not let the shame cycle take over with a slip or a routine disruption. I'm also acknowledging that maybe the way into the cycle, this flywheel, is different this time. Maybe it doesn't need to be fasting, but it's like, hey, tonight I'm going to be in bed at 8:30 with the goal of being asleep by 9 and getting a full 8 hours. And then that's going to make me, I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to have the low leptin, which then I want to eat right away, right? So like I can get back into the cycle that I know works for me in a different way because I've experienced it once. And what this gives me is mobility and not rigidity around everything has to be right. Because of the dad of three and all the things that life have thrown at me, I don't get to be rigid. I don't get to have my 4 a.m. routine wake up looks the same every day. So I need to control the things that I know that I can control. And my long diatribe here, but my point is that if I'm building habits, it starts with one that will then lead to the others.
And the beauty of that is you're sharing that, right? There's a popular book about the body keeps the score. And a lot of what it talks about is like the trauma that we've had and how our body holds it and many different things. Another component, though, that often gets forgotten is that our body also remembers, like riding a bike, our mind, how it remembers things. Our body remembers those things too in the positive way or in the healing way. And so you skipping out like for a week or a month and then having to get back into it, your body does remember this flywheel again where it's like, oh, I got really good sleep last night. Now I'm going to eat healthier today, or I have more energy and more clarity. Oh, I have more clarity. Therefore, I'm going to go to bed again earlier. And it gets us back into that system quicker when we do it. And so I think there is that understanding and grace there too of like, okay, body, work with me. Like, yeah, sure. Yes, I was busy. I slipped, or man, I just put other priorities elsewhere. I would like to get back into this. Therefore, what neuroscience would say is that the pathways that are repeatedly used is what builds these systems. And so if they've been repeatedly used, they might need to get dusted off, but it doesn't mean that the pathways are gone. They're still there. They just covered a little bit. And so it's like, okay, let me restart these habits in order to dust them off. And so as you share that, I'm like, yeah, what are some of those flywheels for each of us, or what are some of those spokes that we can engage with? And so for you, it was the food or the physical first, and that did lead into others. For me, postpartum, like after Lulu and all of her breathing things and whatnot, mine was the mental health side. And that came though with the combination of doing mental health, meaning me getting out on Sunday nights and Nick having dad time from 5 p.m. on, that I went and taught 2 classes of yoga. And so mine was a combination of mental health and physical health getting put together, or wellness. And it became a really sweet thing where Nick got good time. So I'm like, okay, great. My mom guilt's gone. I can release that. I can control it. To your point, I can control it and release that. It's just one night a week. And then also it gave me purpose because I was like, my spiritual side, I have time to contemplate and reflect. I also have time to move my body. And so it was multiple things that then started to change over time that then led to, I was back by 9 o'clock and I was so ready for bed, but it wasn't like I'm exhausted mom time for bed. It was like, my body actually is ready to rest. And so as you're sharing that, I'm like, yeah, how do we habit stack, or how do we start with something though for weeks and weeks and weeks with that one focus and then realize, okay, it will evolve into more. And how do we become aware of that and start repeatedly practicing those things?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good to know where you want to get to. And it's also really good to know what is the way in for you. So for your point, like you and I had different ways into the cycle that led to the best versions of ourselves and feeling we were well.
Yeah, yeah.
It is really overwhelming as a busy person to think I've got to do all these things all at once. So again, I come back to pick the one thing that feels like will get you into it and do it for 3 days. Prioritize the sleep for 3 days. Meditate or pray for 3 days. And then like know where you want to go, but don't put yourself pressure on it. Just focus on the thing that's going to get you into it. And that is like, for me, the Instagram influencer that tells you their workout, everything they do in a day to be well. I feel like it doesn't, that's not helpful. Like that's the end goal. That's like the end point. But like I need the practical way to get there in the short term. And for me, it's just focus on the one thing.
For sure.
The adaptability too that's needed when you have kids, I think is the other piece that like we have to build this in a way that is adaptable and mobile, because if it's predicated on everything looking the same every day, you've built a house of cards. You know, that's really what you built. And anytime there's a disruption, a child gets sick, there's a work trip, the house card falls and you got to rebuild it again. So to your point, like our bodies remember these things. How do we do this? What are the ways onto the flywheel that are most approachable to us to say, this is the sacrifice that I know that I can make. If I can wait to eat breakfast until noon, it's going to lead to really good things. That's what it is for me. It's that simple. If I just wait to eat breakfast until noon, good things will happen. Which is kind of crazy, right?
That's your one thing, right? And so, which is crazy. If you're like, what changed your life? You're like, waiting to eat breakfast till noon. And people are like, what? Right? Because it seems wild or it seems crazy. Like, how does that bring you more money, or how does that allow you mind clarity, or how does that allow you, to be more productive? Whatever the questions are that people have for you on the external, to your core, well, actually it became this piece that then evolved into so many other things that made me well who I am. And to your, just as you were sharing on the Instagram, or the influencer, I shouldn't even use a specific term, but an influencer is like, we didn't see the first 3 years, right? The grind that you and I are in, or the first 10 years, or like whatever got them on their journey. I think that is why people who like have massive weight loss, there's such a championing around that, because we actually get to see them going for a walk, or getting off the couch for the first time, or saying, hey, instead of this big fried thing, I'm actually going to put an apple in my mouth for the first time, or some of those things. And we're like, hey, you got it. Like, because we want to see the authentic, practical steps one after another, as opposed to just the hot thoughts. Don't get me wrong, beautiful humans, but like, we want to see that dance, and we want to see that movement, and we want to see that engagement to say like, oh, can you give me an example that's actually attainable? And so to end it with our 60 seconds centered, I want us to ask this one simple question. Instead of asking, what do I feel like doing? Ask, what would help me become well right now? I want us, especially as we move through more conversations, is to go from addressing feelings in 2026. So often it's like, I feel like this. Well, our feelings really do throw us off. They can be liars. They can be deceitful. They can also be really inspirational, but not accurate. And so instead of asking the feel, what do I feel like doing? Because our brains will tell you nothing, right? Or they'll say like, sit on the couch or scroll. All those things are not helpful. Saying, what would help me become well right now? And to what you said, John, is what's one thing that would help me become well right now? And then sometimes the answer, I'm going to list some options. You can create your own. The 60 seconds to centered is to answer the question, what would help me become well right now? And maybe it's you writing these down, or maybe it's you picking another one, but it's take a walk, drink water, call a friend, cry, pray, take a nap, eat lunch, turn off the phone, laugh, ask for help, say no, go outside, read, dance, sit quietly. It's not going to feel good immediately. Again, the feelings have to come out. We have to say, this is not about the feelings, this is about the doing. And then with time, there will be results ultimately. And then the emotions do follow. So emotions follow. Learning to distinguish between comfort and wellness is part of our growth. It's part of us from being to the becoming, or the becoming to the being. And so I listed those as examples because those are all practical that I could do right now, 0 cost, full engagement, and I can do it for 1 minute, or I can do it for 1 hour or 1 day. And then I move on to the next thing. And so make that one thing, like you said, don't eat for, until lunch. I'm like, hard pass. That's just not for me. I mean, I could try it, I guess. But I'm like, yeah, go for a walk every morning. Like, let me get up and get sunshine. Mine's actually 5 minutes of sunshine because I just need that. And so figuring out what that is for people matters. So 60 seconds centered is ask yourself, what's the one thing you need for wellness? And then reminding yourself that the brain learns over and over and over again. And as we learn to engage with those habits, we actually become more nourished and well when we engage with different sectors of our journey and what makes us us. Anything else you got for the crew, Johnny?
That's it.
That is it. Oh my gosh, we're one step closer to our Misogi, our 100th episode, which is so fun. So while I'm all together, listeners and community members, this is another episode of He Said, She Said. We are so glad that you're here. Well, y'all, thanks for tuning in.
See ya.